Shut up and listen. All right, so a while ago, I read Prince of Thorns. Remember that? Remember Prince of Thorns? I didn't give it a great review. I said the protagonist was so hateable, it kind of ruined the story. But I specifically mentioned that the protagonist had been switched to the antagonist. He would have been better than the best antagonist I had read in like a decade. Great character all around. I just hated following the guy. So that kind of spoiled the story. So I really commended many aspects of it, which is not for me. Next, we read Red Sister. Okay, gotta like the Red Sister. I thought this was great. Red Sister all around. I had a lot of positives for. Really enjoyed it. Plan on reading the next one. This will be the Mark Lawrence trilogy I follow to the end. Most up to date, like most quickly. That'll be the one I'm probably picking up with really soon. But now I picked up Prince of Fools. And this is the one I'm about to review for you. Didn't like it quite as much as Red Sister. That's the quickie review you're gonna get right now. Not quite as good as Red Sister, but probably more wide appeal, mass enjoyable. More people are gonna like Prince of Fools, I feel like. But Daniel, what are you trying to communicate here? Well, let me get to that real quick. So if we actually look at publication date, we had Prince of Thorns in 2011. It's a long time ago, you remember that? You probably had like an iPod Nano then. In 2014, you have Prince of Fools. What does that mean? It means in 2017, we got Red Sister. So if we put these in publication date, I am on an exponential incline of enjoying Mark Lawrence's writing. You're getting better in my opinion, which again is just subjective in my opinion, but Red Sister, man, that's where it's at right now. But let's go ahead and talk about everything Prince of Fools.
Prince of Fools by Mark Lawrence. I quickly want to dive into my journey with Mark Lawrence's writing. Again, something I've done repeatedly, but it's because the more I get into Mark's writing, the more I'm coming to appreciate something he clearly puts a lot of time and effort into. And that's crafting tone from perspective. Something many people do. This is common throughout every genre. Depending on which character you follow, their worldview affects how you, as the reader, experience the world. But with Mark writing these first-person, intensely intimate trilogies, well, two of the ones I've read, not Red Sister, this has an immense effect on story, and I think it's why I found Prince of Thorns so jarring, and it made me not enjoy it. Following this sociopath's head so closely just became miserable to me. I really didn't like doing that, but I still really appreciated what was accomplished character-wise there, especially being willing to go against the grain so heavily, and just not flinch away from having this person be the worst. Recently in an interview with Brent Weeks, he talked about how many authors are afraid to double down and really make their protagonists have flaws. It felt like the opposite with Jorg. It felt like Mark was hesitant to give Jorg any redeeming qualities, and he really just didn't. He's the worst. And so while I immensely appreciated it, it just wasn't quite my taste. I pulled back from it and was like, hey, I like to like my protagonist and be invested emotionally in their story and root for them, not actively hope they get struck by lightning. Now with Prince of Fools, I get to dive into the same world and experience the shifting of lenses that Mark is doing amazingly effectively. They're set within the same world, a post-apocalyptic Europe, something we'll get to a bit more later. And the difference between Jorg and Jalin, the two protagonists we follow in their respective stories, has an incredible effect on how this world is viewed. Both are self-centered. Maybe that's the reason Mark decided to go with first person. A choice, again, I struggle with a little bit, but he does it so effectively here, especially in Prince of Fools. I found myself not minding it as much as I normally do, so that's a great sign. I'd actually like to know whether or not the choice to do first person was based off the fact they're so selfish, and it's like a weird way to communicate that to the reader in like a or maybe, I don't know. I read too much into things. Moving on. But we are matter-of-factly within the same world. And while Jorg's story and following this character who focuses so much on the horrors and revels in the brutality and awfulness around him, basically making the reader see the worst things in this entire story to an extreme, Prince of Fools takes an entirely different approach. We're still in the same world, the same setting, but because we're with someone who, instead of being a self-centered sociopath who likes pain, they're a self-centered coward who is trying to just get drunk and laid, it makes for a whole different view of what's going on. Now, I know many people are probably thinking, duh, that's how that works. But reading these stories so close together just exemplified how well it's being done, and I really just want to put emphasis there. Mark reframed his own world brilliantly. It makes complete sense with the characters crafted, and it better realizes the world as a whole. Think of a 2D image. It's taken from one perspective. The way you capture a 3D image is you take another of the same from a slightly different angle, and then you get a actual 3D image of the world you are looking at. Metaphorically, I feel like the same thing was accomplished here. So big heaps of praise for that, but let's get into the wider review. The two protagonists of this story, Snorri and Jallan, are brilliant. Love them both, and the juxtaposition of who they are and their origins and culture work together so well. It has almost a buddy cop vibe, but not really, that's overused. Basically, it's two hesitant friends being forced on an adventure together. Kind of buddy cop, but not. And I loved it. So well done, but I can't really say too much about that without getting into specific events and spoilers, but just believe me when I say their chemistry works, and they're two well-selected characters as a whole to go on this adventure together, and they're forced to go on this adventure by mysteriously having a spell placed on them together that forces them to cooperate. And while I praise the setting of this stories, I guess I'm also praising Prince of Thorns in a way here indirectly, to a great effect. I really do love the setting and the concept of the world. My one real criticism, and this is my one real criticism of Prince of Fools, would I'd like more smaller details of this world harkening back to our own, because clearly our histories are still prevalent and known here, but we're not getting much beyond just like offhanded character words thrown around. And there's like, I guess, some sci-fi elements because of that. Just more little nuggets would have been appreciated, but then again, I'm a world-building junkie, so probably ignore that. I'm a little bit obsessed with diving deep into worlds and finding all the nuggets as possible. And maybe I missed a couple. Maybe there's more to come in the books down the road that I will see and appreciate more. Overall, Prince of Fools is just well executed from start to finish. It's a rather simple plot, but that just lends to the focus being on the characters, who are very well realized and have a great relationship, which propels the reader just deeper and deeper into the story. You want to get to know these characters. You want to see how their relationship evolves, whether or not the web of lies becomes unraveled, etc., etc. That's never not going to be engaging when it's well done. It's a tried and true method of storytelling. While Prince of Thorns was clearly grim dark because we're from this perspective of a protagonist who is just obsessed with the vileness of the world, they are one of the worst people and there's no real faith in humanity, Prince of Fools really is not. It's not grim dark in that way because we're following someone who doesn't really think the whole world is complete and utter. Shut up, monkeys! And that does give us an angle of, oh, things can be okay. There's also the addition that he's just so selfish, he just doesn't really see in detail the things happening to people around him. There's definitely an element of that as well, which oddly pulls away from the grimdark elements a bit. I'd be doing this review a disservice if I didn't also say Snorri is a great character. I really enjoyed him, his culture, getting to know those people as well. One of the best aspects of the story. The pacing was great. I can't think of many criticisms here. The only thing I can think to say at this point, which might sound contradictory to a lot of what I've said, I actually planned to finish the Red Sister series first because I found it more intriguing and I'm just more driven to plow through that story. I also found the character work technically a little more interesting, but I do believe Prince of Fools will be my default recommendation for Mark Lawrence from here on out because it has a more mass appeal with the level of action and humor, which lands consistently. It's a funny book while still being dark and not exactly lighthearted. And I know most people have trouble with a slower paced book like Red Sister, which definitely is, and Prince of Fools is not slowly paced at all. It's really fast. Once I actually had time to read this, I barreled through it. Overall, for Prince of Fools, I'm feeling this is what I will recommend people for Mark Lawrence from now on until I get further on in his books, and I'm excited to do so. I'm really glad you guys pushed me to read more after Prince of Thorns because I wouldn't have without that. And I can honestly say he's definitely one of the better authors working currently in the fantasy genre. There's been a lot of stuff I've read recently that does not have a strong authorial voice where I know the person's dialogue just by the way it's written, but I definitely could spot Mark Lawrence writing dialogue at this point because the guy is sharp with how his characters engage, and that's always a good thing as well. Anyway, guys, like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.